I used to think engagement parties were harmless. A formality, a checkpoint, one last collective inhale before the rest of your life locks into place. That afternoon, my parents' backyard looked exactly like it was supposed to. White string lights, folding tables dressed up to look intentional, 60 familiar faces, family friends, old coworkers, cousins I hadn't seen in years, all smiling like they already knew how our story ended. I stood near the patio, drink in hand, listening to my former roommate retell a college story I'd heard a dozen times before. My fiancé stood beside me, relaxed, charming, effortlessly at ease. His arm rested around my waist, like it belonged there, like it always had. Then someone walked through the gate who didn't hesitate. She didn't scan the crowd, didn't linger by the drinks, or look for an invitation to belong. She walked straight toward us with the confidence of someone who already knew her role. Tall, put together, calm in a way that felt deliberate. "Congratulations," she said brightly, stopping right in front of us. She turned to me first and extended her hand. "I'm one of his exes." I blinked, smiled out of instinct. Engagement parties are strange that way. People appear, and you assume they're supposed to be there. Then she tilted her head slightly and added, just loud enough for the four of us standing there to hear, "Number 8, welcome to the club." She smiled once, polite, almost kind. And then she walked away toward the bar like she hadn't just detonated something. The air shifted. My former roommate's wife stared at the ground. Someone nearby cleared their throat. My fiancé laughed, too fast, too sharp. "Oh my God," he said. "She's drunk. That's so embarrassing." He leaned closer to me. "We dated for like 2 months, years ago. She's clearly bitter." But his hand tightened around mine. "Number 8. That wasn't a throwaway comment. It wasn't vague. It wasn't sloppy. It was specific in a way that stuck. I didn't confront him there. My parents were watching. Too many people. Too much noise. I smiled when I was expected to. I nodded when someone congratulated us. But the number lodged itself in my chest. And by the time the lights dimmed and the guests left, I already knew something important had cracked. Not loudly, cleanly. And whatever sat behind that number wasn't going to stay buried much longer. I met him 2 years earlier at a summer cookout hosted by a mutual friend. Nothing cinematic. No sparks flying across the yard. Just 2 people standing near the grill, arguing lightly about whether charcoal actually made food taste better, or if that was just nostalgia pretending to be science. He was easy to talk to, warm without being intrusive, curious in a way that felt attentive, not interrogative. When he laughed, he leaned back slightly, like he didn't need the moment to land a certain way. I remember thinking that felt safe. We started seeing each other casually. Coffee after work, long walks that turned into dinners that stretched late enough to feel intentional. He asked thoughtful questions, remembered small details, sent texts that weren't performative, just present. By the 3rd month, he met my parents. By the 6th, we were spending most nights together without ever officially deciding to. It just happened. Natural. Seamless. The kind of progression people describe when they say, "When you know, you know." When things started to feel serious, I did what I thought was responsible. I asked about his past. Not because I was suspicious, because I believed adults should understand the terrain they're stepping into. We were sitting on my couch, legs tangled, some forgettable show playing in the background. "So," I said casually, "serious relationships, before me. What's your history?" He didn't hesitate. 2, he said. 1 in college, about a year. Another after graduation, maybe a year and a half. And? "And they just didn't work out," he shrugged. "No drama, no cheating, just wrong timing." It felt reasonable, plausible, familiar even. I'd had my own relationships. Nothing extreme, nothing worth dissecting under a microscope. "Cool," I said, and I meant it. I didn't press. I didn't ask follow-ups. I didn't request names or timelines or emotional autopsies. Why would I? Trust at that point felt like the default setting. We moved in together after a year. It wasn't rushed. We talked about logistics, rent, chores, boundaries. He was considerate, attentive, eager to build something shared. My friends liked him. My family liked him. He made effort without making a show of it. 6 months ago, he proposed. Nothing flashy. Just us. Quiet. Thoughtful. He talked about partnership, about choosing each other deliberately, about how he'd never been so sure of anything in his life. I believed him. The engagement period felt easy, planning without panic, conversations about the future that didn't come with resistance. He told people he was excited, proud, ready. Looking back, I realize how often he emphasized how simple our relationship was. No baggage, he'd say, no drama, finally doing it right. At the time, it sounded like gratitude. Now I hear rehearsal. Because what I didn't know, what I couldn't have known yet, was that he wasn't simplifying for clarity. He was editing, reducing, rounding down, turning entire chapters into footnotes because he'd learned, somewhere along the way, that fewer details meant fewer questions. And I never questioned him. Not because I was naive, because nothing, at that point, had given me a reason to. After the engagement party, I told myself I was being dramatic. One comment, one stranger, one moment that didn't belong to the rest of our life. I'd spent 2 years with him without a single reason to doubt his character. People don't unravel that quickly, I thought. Relationships don't collapse because of a number thrown out by a woman I'd never met. So I waited, not because I was convinced, because I didn't want to become the kind of woman who interrogates shadows. That night, after the last car pulled away and my parents finally went inside, we stayed behind to clean up. Plates stacked, glasses rinsed, the yard quiet in that hollow post-celebration way. I brought it up casually, or at least I tried to. "So," I said, keeping my tone light, "the woman from earlier, you said you dated her for 2 months?" "Yeah," he replied, without looking up, loading the dishwasher. "Barely anything. But she seemed pretty confident about the number." He stopped mid-motion. "What are you trying to say?" "I'm not saying anything," I said. "I'm just asking why she'd call me number 8 if you told me you'd only had 2 serious relationships." He turned slowly. "Because she's bitter," he said flatly. "Because she wanted attention. Because she wanted to ruin our night." "It didn't ruin it," I said. "I just want to understand." His jaw tightened. "This feels like an interrogation." "I'm asking a question." "Well, it feels like you don't trust me." There it was, the pivot. If I questioned the information, I was questioning him. If I needed clarity, I was suddenly creating conflict. "I told you about my past," he continued. "If you can't trust me after 2 years, maybe we have bigger problems." I let it go, mostly because I was tired, partly because I didn't want to end the night on an argument that felt disproportionate to the moment. But sleep didn't come easily. The next morning, the number was still there. 8. Specific numbers don't come from nowhere. I did something I'm not proud of, but I don't regret it. I went through his Facebook. Not messages, not private conversations, just the public trail he'd never bothered to clean up. It didn't take long. The woman from the party was there. Not 2 months, nearly 8. Vacation photos, wedding guest pictures, friends commenting like it was common knowledge. Then another woman, 6 months, public relationship. Then another, over a year. I started a list in my phone, screenshots with visible dates, names, timelines. By the time I stopped, my coffee was cold and my hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from the quiet realization that I wasn't uncovering anomalies. I was uncovering a pattern. He came into the kitchen, dressed for work, and kissed my cheek. "You're up early." Couldn't sleep. He poured coffee, casual. "You're not still thinking about that woman from the party, are you?" I turned my phone toward him. "This," I said, "help me understand this." The color drained from his face. "That's not—" he started, then stopped. "We broke up and got back together a few times." "And this one?" He stared at the counter. "And this one?" His mug hit the counter harder than necessary. "Are you seriously stalking my Facebook right now?" he snapped. "That's creepy." "And lying about your entire relationship history isn't?" "They weren't serious," he said quickly. "A year isn't serious, not like us." "How many serious relationships have you had before me?" He exhaled sharply. "I don't know, 5, 6, does it matter?" It mattered, because 2 had become 6. And someone else had already said 8. And for the first time since I'd met him, I realized I wasn't arguing with confusion. I was arguing with a story that kept changing depending on who was listening. I didn't confront him further that morning. Not because I believed his explanation, but because I needed to understand whether I was dealing with confusion or calculation. He left for work irritated, not guilty. Kissed my forehead like this was a minor misunderstanding we'd laugh about later. "We'll talk tonight," he said, "when you're being rational." The door closed behind him, and the apartment went quiet in that unnatural way it does when something important has shifted but nothing has officially happened yet. I texted work and said I wasn't feeling well. It wasn't a lie. I spent the day going deeper, not spiraling, not digging wildly, just methodically confirming what was already there. By mid-afternoon, I had 7 confirmed relationships before me. 7. Not casual dating, not a few dates that fizzled. These were months-long relationships, trips together, wedding guest photos, friends commenting like these women were permanent fixtures in his life. 7 serious relationships. That was when my phone buzzed. A Facebook message request. A name I didn't recognize. Hey, I know this is strange, but I saw posts about your engagement party. I think you should know something about your fiancé. My pulse jumped. It's important. We agreed to meet the next morning for coffee. Her name was Lauren. She arrived early, phone already in her hand, like she'd rehearsed how to do this without making it worse. I don't know you, she said carefully. And this is uncomfortable, but when I saw who you were engaged to, I couldn't stay quiet. She turned her phone toward me. A photo. A woman's hand. A ring. Did he ever mention this? Lauren asked. No, I said quietly. He was engaged to me, she said, for 3 months, before I found out he'd been sleeping with someone from his gym. The air felt thin, like the coffee shop had quietly lost oxygen. He told you he'd never been engaged before, right? She added. I nodded. He told me the same thing, she said. And when it ended, he told people I was abusive. Tried to file a restraining order. It got dismissed, but the damage stuck. She slid a business card across the table. You're going to need a lawyer, she said, because when you end this, and you should, he's going to try to control the story. I didn't argue. I didn't defend him. I didn't even ask why she cared, because I could hear it in her voice. This wasn't gossip. This was a warning. By the end of that day, I'd spoken to 6 different women. 6. Not a pile-on, not a group chat. Individual conversations, each one arriving with the same quiet precision. Screenshots, dates, the kind of receipts you don't keep unless you've been forced to. And the same core truth. He had been engaged 4 times before me. Every engagement ended because he cheated. That number 8 at the party hadn't been a cruel flourish. It had been math. 8 serious relationships that mattered enough to leave a trail. 4 of them engagements. I wasn't uncovering misunderstandings. I was uncovering a system. I didn't confront him that night. Not because I didn't want to, but because my body physically couldn't carry the weight of what I knew yet. By the time I got home, the sun was already low. The sky, that dull gray blue that makes everything feel unfinished. I sat in my car for a long time before going inside, hands resting on the steering wheel, heartbeat loud enough to feel in my throat. 4 engagements. 4. All ended because he cheated. The word fiancé felt foreign now, like it belonged to someone else's life, not mine. He came home late, casual, relaxed, like nothing had happened. Hey, he said, setting his keys down. You okay? I watched him move around the kitchen, pouring water, checking his phone, existing comfortably in a reality that no longer applied to me. We need to talk, I said. He froze. Not startled, not confused. Prepared. Oh God, he sighed. Is this still about that? I stayed seated at the table. I met one of your exes today. That got his attention. Which one? He asked too quickly. Lauren. The color drained from his face. Just enough. What did she tell you? He asked, voice careful now. That you were engaged, I said. For 3 months, before you cheated on her. He laughed once, short, defensive. She's lying. She showed me the ring, I said. He looked away. She said you told people she was abusive, that you tried to file a restraining order. She was unstable, he snapped. You can't trust her. I've talked to 6 women, I said. Today. That did it. His posture changed. His shoulders dropped. The performance shifted. You went behind my back, he said quietly. You contacted my exes. They contacted me, I replied, after the engagement party. He rubbed his face like I was forcing him to do math he didn't want to do out loud. Okay, he said. Fine, I didn't tell you everything. How many times were you engaged before me? Silence. Answer me. 4, he said finally, but those don't count. I let the words sit between us. Why? I asked. Because they were mistakes, he said. I was young. I didn't know what I wanted. You cheated on every one of them. Another pause. Yes. The room felt smaller. Were you ever going to tell me? I asked. No, he admitted, because it didn't matter. I'm with you now. It matters because you lied to my face. I lied to protect us, he said. Women judge. They hear numbers and assume the worst. I asked you directly. And I answered in a way that wouldn't scare you off. That sentence settled something inside me. This wasn't fear. This was strategy. I'm calling off the wedding, I said. He stood up abruptly. No, we can fix this. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever you want. I don't want anything, I said. I want you out. This is my home too. The lease is in my name, I replied. You moved in 6 months ago. You can't just kick me out. I'm asking you to leave, I said. You have until Sunday. His expression hardened. You're making a huge mistake. Pack your things, I repeated. The tears appeared and disappeared in the same breath, like a switch. You're going to regret this, he said. I've already told everyone about the wedding. Then you can explain why it's canceled. I'll tell them you're controlling, he said calmly. That you interrogated me. That you're insecure. I looked at him steadily. I have documentation, I said, and witnesses. He reached for his phone. I'm calling my dad. He's a lawyer. Go ahead, I said. When his father put him on speaker, I told him the truth. All of it. 4 engagements. Cheating. Lies. There was a long silence on the line. Then his father spoke. Pack your things, he said. You can stay with us. The call ended. My fiancé stared at me with something close to hatred. You turned my own father against me. No, I said. You did that 4 engagements ago. When he slammed the door behind him, a picture frame fell off the wall and shattered. I didn't move. I just sat there, heart pounding, knowing one thing for certain. The wedding wasn't what broke us. The truth did. I thought calling off the wedding would be the hardest part. I was wrong. The first 48 hours after he moved out were quiet in a way that felt artificial, like the calm before something reorganizes itself violently. The apartment looked the same, but it didn't feel inhabited anymore. His shoes were gone, his toiletries. The space he used to occupy lingered like a bad smell you couldn't air out fast enough. I slept in short, shallow intervals. Every time my phone buzzed, my body jolted awake before my mind could catch up. He didn't come back begging. He went straight to damage control. The first call came from his mother the next morning. I don't understand why you're doing this, she said, skipping any form of greeting. Everyone has a past. This isn't a past, I replied. It's a pattern. You're being dramatic, she snapped. You're throwing away 2 years over things that happened before you. And over the lying, I said. And the cheating. He wouldn't have cheated on you, she insisted. You're different. That sentence landed exactly the way it was supposed to, like a test. I was number 8, I said quietly. So were the others before me. She went silent. Then, you didn't have to make this public. I didn't, I said. He did when he started lying about me. She hung up. By noon, my phone was lighting up with messages, some confused, some concerned, some unmistakably hostile. Apparently, he'd already started telling people his version. I was controlling. I was obsessed with his past. I humiliated him. I interrogated him like a criminal. By the end of the day, the email went out. 60 people, friends, family, co-workers, out-of-town relatives who'd already booked flights. With a heavy heart, I'm announcing that the wedding has been canceled. After reflection, I've realized she is not the partner I believed her to be. Her controlling behavior and inability to accept my past made it clear this marriage would not be healthy. I'm grateful I learned this before making a legal commitment. I stared at the screen, chest tight. He hadn't just rewritten the ending. He'd rewritten the entire story. So I corrected the record. 1 post, public, calm, factual. The wedding is canceled because I discovered my fiancé had been engaged 4 times before me and cheated on all 4 fiancés. He lied about his relationship history for 2 years. I have documentation from multiple sources. This was not an easy decision, but I will not marry someone with a documented pattern of infidelity and dishonesty. I hit post and put my phone down. The reaction was immediate. Support from my friends. Shock from people who hadn't known anything was wrong. Anger from his side. Friends accusing me of oversharing, of cruelty, of weaponizing private information. By that evening, Lauren commented, I was engagement number 1. He cheated on me and then told people I was abusive. What she's saying is true. Then another woman. Engagement number 2. Same story. Then another. 4 women. Same pattern. Same receipts. His post disappeared within 20 minutes. His profile went private shortly after. That night, there was pounding on my door. Hard, aggressive. I checked the peephole. 3 men I didn't recognize. I cracked the door with the chain still on. Phone already recording. You need to fix this, one of them said. You've destroyed him. He sent the email, I replied. I responded. So you admit you're trying to ruin him? I'm correcting lies. One of them leaned forward, testing the chain. You had no right to put his business online. You're trespassing, I said evenly. Leave or I'm calling the police. They left muttering threats. I filed a report anyway. 2 days later, my boss called. HR wanted to see me first thing the next morning. An anonymous complaint had been filed, accusing me of discussing personal matters at work in a way that created a hostile environment. I sat in a sterile conference room while 2 HR representatives slid a printed complaint across the table. I didn't argue. I showed them the email he sent. My response, the corroboration, the timelines. One of them whispered, "Wow," under her breath. The complaint was dismissed. That night, he tried again, this time legally. A cease and desist letter from his father's law firm demanding I remove my post and stop defaming him. I forwarded it to the lawyer Lauren had recommended. He laughed. Truth is an absolute defense, he said. They're bluffing. So I didn't take the post down. By the end of the week, I realized something important. This wasn't escalation because I was loud. It was escalation because I refused to be quiet. And the moment I stopped absorbing his version of events without protest, everything he'd built around control began to crack. The adrenaline didn't fade all at once. It leaked out slowly, through sleepless nights, through the way my hands shook when I reached for my phone, through the constant sense that something else was about to drop. For a week, I stayed sharp, focused, functional. Then my body caught up. It happened on a Tuesday night, long after the comments had slowed and the messages stopped coming in waves. The apartment was quiet in a way that felt accusatory. Just me. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the sink, trying to remember the last time I'd eaten something that wasn't toast or coffee. The light above the stove flickered once, twice, then steadied. My chest tightened for no clear reason. And suddenly I couldn't breathe. Not a panic attack, the dramatic kind people recognize. This was quieter, heavier, like my lungs had decided they were done carrying things that didn't belong to them anymore. I sat down on the floor with my back against the cabinet, knees pulled in, counting my breaths because that's what you do when everything feels too big. In, out, in. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. You didn't have to destroy him like this. I stared at the screen. Another message followed. You're not innocent. You just wanted to punish him. I didn't reply. Then another. Everyone has a past. You're not special. My hands went numb. I blocked the number. Then another one popped up. Then another. Different numbers. Same tone. I knew exactly where it was coming from. He wasn't speaking directly anymore. He was outsourcing. I spent the night with the lights on, the chain locked, my phone face down on the table like it might bite me if I looked at it too long. Every sound outside made my heart stutter. Around 3 a.m, I finally slept. I dreamed I was back at the engagement party, everyone smiling under the string lights, and I was the only one who couldn't hear what anyone was saying. Their mouths moved, but no sound came out. I tried to speak and realized my voice was gone. I woke up crying. That morning, I skipped work for the first time since all this started. Not to investigate, not to prepare, but because I couldn't sit upright without feeling like I might break in half. I called my mom. I didn't plan what to say. The moment she answered, my composure collapsed. I'm tired, I said. That was all it took. She didn't ask for details. She didn't offer solutions. She just said, come over. I sat at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug I wasn't drinking from, while she moved quietly around the room, like she understood that noise would only make it worse. What if I'm wrong? I asked finally. What if I didn't need to make it public? She looked at me carefully. Did he make it public first? Yes. Did you lie? No. Then you're not wrong, she said. You're just standing in the aftermath. That afternoon, the lawyer called. They filed for a restraining order, he said calmly, claiming harassment and stalking. The word stalking made my stomach drop. They're saying you coordinated with his exes to attack him online. I closed my eyes. What happens now? I asked. We respond, he said. You didn't initiate contact. You didn't threaten. You documented facts. The judge will see that. After the call, I sat there for a long time, staring at the wall where our engagement photo used to hang. This was the moment I'd been bracing for. Not the shouting, not the confrontation, not even the smear campaign. This. The part where you're alone with the consequences of telling the truth in a world that prefers things tidy and quiet. I wondered, briefly, what would have happened if I'd stayed silent, if I'd swallowed it, if I'd let him rewrite the ending without resistance. The thought didn't bring relief. It brought nausea, because silence wouldn't have been peace. It would have been permission. That night, I packed the last box of his things I'd missed, a sweater shoved behind the couch, a book he'd left on the nightstand. I taped it shut, labeled it clearly, and set it by the door. I wasn't breaking. I was shedding weight I was never meant to carry, even if it didn't feel like strength yet. The court date was set for 2 weeks later. 2 weeks of waiting in a suspended version of reality where everything felt provisional. My routines, my sense of safety, even my own confidence. I stopped checking social media entirely. Let my lawyer handle communication. Let my phone ring without answering unknown numbers. Control, I learned, wasn't about reacting faster. It was about choosing when not to react at all. On the morning of the hearing, I wore the simplest thing I owned. No statement pieces, no armor disguised as confidence, just clean lines and steady shoes. I wanted nothing about me to distract from the facts. He arrived early. Of course he did. He sat a few rows ahead of me, with his father beside him, posture composed, hands folded like someone who believed decorum could substitute for honesty. When he turned and saw me, his expression flickered. Surprise, irritation, something sharper underneath. He hadn't expected me to show up calm. The judge reviewed the filings without ceremony. He alleged harassment. He alleged stalking. He alleged coordinated attacks. My lawyer stood and spoke plainly. She did not initiate contact with any of the women who came forward, he said. They contacted her independently after seeing public information he chose to share. She made one post, in response to an email he sent to 60 people that falsely accused her of controlling behavior. Screenshots were submitted, timelines laid out, messages entered into the record. Lauren's statement was read aloud. Then another woman's, then another. 4 engagements, 4 affairs, 4 nearly identical endings. The judge looked up. "Sir," she said to him evenly, "you initiated the public discussion of this matter." She responded with verifiable facts. That does not constitute harassment. She denied the restraining order, and then, almost as an afterthought, added, "I suggest you stop filing frivolous claims." The gavel came down. It was over. Outside the courtroom, his father stopped me. "Off the record," he said quietly, "you dodged a serious problem." I didn't respond. I didn't need validation from a man who'd helped cover for it. That afternoon, I went back to my apartment and did something small but definitive. I took the ring from the drawer where I'd placed it weeks earlier. Not angrily, not ceremonially. I set it on the counter. Then I slid it into an envelope, sealed it, and labeled it clearly. No note, no explanation. Just closure. The next email came from the wedding venue. Half the deposit refunded after reviewing the documentation I'd provided. No argument, no pushback. His family tried to demand reimbursement for flights, dresses, accommodations. I declined. I didn't owe them restitution for his pattern. By the end of the week, the noise had quieted. His profile stayed private. The messages stopped. The narrative he'd tried to construct collapsed under its own weight once there was nothing left to provoke. One evening, Lauren texted me, "You okay?" I stared at the message longer than necessary before replying. "I will be." And I meant it. That night, I slept through until morning for the first time in weeks. No dreams, no jolts awake, no rehearsing conversations that would never happen. Just rest. The truth hadn't made things easier, but it had made them clean. And for the first time since that number was spoken aloud under string lights and polite laughter, I felt something steady return to me. Not relief, authority.